Tingles with flyby. Daily ASMR videos. Hello, my tinglings. So, I wanted to address this issue out loud as well. I've just recorded a little sign language explanation, but I think this would be good to be a little bit more common knowledge. And so I don't know how many people will actually make it to the voiceover at the end to actually hear what this means. So if you do, just check the timestamps down below and you can skip to the sign language version or the voiceover version if you prefer that. I'll probably talk a little bit differently here, but if you prefer that, go right ahead. So lots of people, when they hear that there are different sign languages that exist, such as that there's British Sign Language up in the UK, American Sign Language in America, and Auslan in Australia, because those are three that I've worked with, but they're different languages for different countries, Spain, France, it's Korean Sign Language, everything like that. And whenever I tell people about this, probably half of the time, I get somebody asking me, oh, why isn't sign language just universal? Like, why don't they have a universal sign language? And this actually gets into a question which is about why is language not universal? Because sign language really just follows the same trajectory of any other language. And it is so sign languages are full, robust languages. They have separate grammar. So with sign language you can communicate pretty much anything you would want to communicate. And it's not just based on the spoken language. They have, as you'll probably notice if you've watched any of these other videos, unique ways of communicating where you can actually get more information sometimes than you would in spoken language. And the reason, though, for having different sign languages, it's probably two reasons. And the first one is that it's usually connected to place, and it's the same as having different dialects in different parts of the country. So Southern dialect, Boston accent, all those sort of different accents and dialects. You see variations, so sign language has a lot of variation across, so like American Sign Language has a lot of variation across the country of, the USA. And so this also gets into a question of what actually keeps language the same. So there's actually a few things that we're addressing here. But so the first thing I said is that history is a reason. So the history of, if you think back particularly, 100 years ago, 150 years ago, when a lot of sign language was becoming a bit more common, a lot of that would come from just small little pockets of people, and they might learn some sign language. But so it would be really restricted. If you think about when you have a clique in high school and they all start talking like each other, but people outside of the group, there's ways that words are used that other people don't know. And so, but those people have that history together, and so they know that. So part of that is that history. It's, okay, well, in the US and the UK, a huge barrier there, so there's not actually a lot of transfer of language between, and more so with sign language because it's not a written language either, and so there just isn't that stability at that time. I haven't actually looked up any studies on this, but my guess would be that probably sign language is actually varies less now that with the proliferation of video. So back in the day, you know, a deaf person from California, a deaf person from Florida would be very unlikely to talk to each other. Whereas now, you know, people can put videos up on YouTube, you know, people can talk to people, Skype, FaceTime, Messenger, and that allows you to establish a way of talking to each other between those groups. So that's part of how you actually have a stable language, is by having a proliferation of media and things that people can share and that lots of people consume in that language. But I think the second issue is one that people are a lot less aware of. And that is, I think, sometimes kind of intrinsically know it, but wouldn't really be able to put our finger on that. And it's that there is a connection between language and culture. So our language is a fundamental way of expressing culture. And languages will be a reflection of culture and cultural values and identities. And this is a lot of the reason that back in the day when conquerors would come in, they would prohibit the use of the old language. And lots of cultural knowledge and lots of very important knowledge has actually been lost that way. But it's one of the quickest ways to kill a culture is to prohibit the use of that language, because language and culture are so connected. And this reason is huge. So wherever you have cultural differences, you're probably going to see language differences, which you can even see if you think in a hearing context, you know, the South versus the North in the US, those dialects and accents are very distinct. And, you know, Southerners have a very proud Southern heritage. It's a different cultural context, but you can also see that connection to history. So it's connected to the history as well, and the history forms part of that cultural identity. And so the same thing happens in sign languages. So you've got different cultures and different people living in different areas. So of course they've got different ways of doing things. And so you have to have languages that reflect that. So there's your little spoken introduction about why there are multiple sign languages. So keep your questions coming. I love them. They're very interesting, and we'll keep learning about them. Now I'm going to pass over to myself so I can tell you about that in sign language. Hello. Today we learn why not a universal sign language. You've been wondering that, haven't you? Okay, good. Lots of people think sign language should be the same all around the world. But it's different everywhere. Why? Lots of people don't understand language. The first reason hearing languages are different, you know? Well, it's because history and culture. So Spain is a different from France. Culture and language are different. You understand? And language stays the same when people can talk together. So TV, movies, they help language kind of persist and stay the same. But with deaf, they don't have as much TV, movies. And in the USA, in America, there's lots of different minor variations. So in California, in Maryland, or Florida, lots of little differences for sign language. And people in California, over here, and people in Florida, they talk sign language together not really very often. It's too far away. Now, today, maybe. Why? Because of the internet. Internet makes it easier to talk. I can say, hey, how are you going? Oh, I'm good. They use Skype, 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 or FaceTime, or Facebook, Messenger, video. Yeah, but you still have the world, lots of different people have different culture, and hearing and deaf cultures are different. Lots of deaf people have the culture and their love being deaf, they're proud of being deaf. Not only can't hear, but their culture, they know deaf people, they have deaf friends, lots of deaf people together. So they have a culture. But in America. Fly over here, we have the UK. Not together. The cultures are different. But the history are different as well. So the people who made the sign languages are different. So if you think the time when the sign language kind of arose, it wasn't lots of people flying back and forth. They couldn't fly at all. There weren't airplanes. No. So you would take a boat. I don't know the sign for boat. You might sail. Or steamboat, I guess. It takes a long time. So that makes your language different. The culture's different as well. You understand? If you wonder why you speak differently languages, it's the same reason why deaf people sign differently.